Story 1. The Red Frost. Santa didn't come down the chimney that year. He didn't wear a suit. When the thing outside tapped on my window, it didn't have skin. It was just wet, exposed muscle shivering in the cold. I was 9 years old. The blizzard had snapped the power lines at 6 o'clock. By midnight, the cabin was a tomb. The only light came from the moon reflecting off 4 feet of snow. Dad had passed out downstairs on the couch, exhausted. I was alone upstairs, wide awake, watching the frost crawl over the glass. That's when I saw it. Standing at the edge of the woods, maybe 100 yards out. It was impossibly tall, like a stretched-out shadow. But it wasn't a shadow. It was bright, crimson wetness. It looked like a man who had been peeled alive. It stood perfectly still, watching the house. I rubbed my eyes, praying the cold was making me hallucinate. When I looked back, the tree line was empty. I let out a shaky breath. I looked down at the front porch directly below my window. My blood turned to ice. It was there. It hadn't walked across the snow. There were no footprints leading to the house. It had just arrived, right at our door. I heard the front doorknob rattle downstairs. It wasn't a frantic shake. It was slow, deliberate. Click, click. I backed away from the window, my bare feet freezing on the wood floor. I crept to the hallway, listening. Downstairs, I heard my dad stir on the couch. "Hello?" He called out, his voice thick with sleep. "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a voice answered him from the other side of the door. But it wasn't a person. It sounded wet, slushy, like raw meat slapping together to mimic human speech. "Let me in." Dad walked toward the door. I wanted to scream at him to stop, but my throat was paralyzed. "I told you to leave," Dad grumbled, reaching for the lock. The sound that followed wasn't the door opening. It was the sound of the wood exploding. The crash shook the entire cabin. Dad screamed. It wasn't a brave scream. It was a choked, gurgling sound of absolute shock. Then came the tearing noise. Wet, heavy tearing, like a butcher pulling ribs apart. Then a heavy thud. And then, absolute silence. I scrambled back into my room and dove under the bed. I squeezed myself against the wall, surrounded by dust bunnies, shaking so hard I thought my bones would snap. I stared at the sliver of moonlight hitting the floorboards. 5 minutes passed. The house was dead quiet. The wind howled outside, but inside, nothing moved. Then I heard it. The stairs creaked. Something heavy was coming up. It didn't sound like boots. It sounded like wet sponges hitting the wood. Squish. Step. Squish. Step. It was taking its time. It knew I was there. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath until my lungs burned. Slowly, the doorknob turned. The door drifted open. A long, jagged shadow fell across the floor right in front of my face. Then, 2 feet stepped into the room. They were bare, red, and glistening. They had 3 toes, long and crooked, digging into the carpet. I squeezed my eyes shut, begging God to make me invisible. The floorboards groaned as the thing leaned down. Suddenly, the mattress above me was ripped away. The bed frame was thrown across the room like it weighed nothing. I looked up. The thing towering over me didn't have a face. It just had a smooth, red skull and a mouth that split vertically down its neck, filled with needle-thin teeth. Its beard wasn't hair. It was dripping icicles of frozen blood. It leaned close to my face. Its breath smelled like old copper and rot. In its hand, it was clutching a pile of loose, empty skin. It was my father's face. It held the skin up to its own raw skull. Does this fit? Story 2. The Offering. Most kids leave milk and cookies. We didn't. The thing that visited our house on Christmas Eve didn't like sweets. It wanted meat. Specifically, raw liver. The rule was simple. Place the offering on the fireplace mantle by 10 p.m. Lock your bedroom door. Do not come out until the sun hits the snow. I turned 14 that year. I decided I was too old for fairy tales. I thought my parents were superstitious idiots, so I decided to prove a point. I sat in my room, headphones on, playing video games, letting the clock tick past the deadline. I wanted to see the look on their faces in the morning when the liver was still in the fridge and we were all still alive. I paused my game to get a drink. I looked at the time. 11:15 p.m. The house was silent. Too silent. The air felt heavy, like the pressure dropped before a tornado. My stomach turned. Not because I was scared, but because the silence felt physical. It pressed against my eardrums. I walked into the hallway. The Christmas tree lights weren't twinkling. They were burning a steady, angry red. I ran down the stairs and burst into the kitchen. The smell hit me instantly. It didn't smell like pine or cinnamon. It smelled like sulfur and wet dog hair. I gagged, ripping the fridge open. The plate of liver was right where I left it. Cold, bloody, forgotten. I grabbed the plate and spun around to run to the living room. I stopped cold. He was already there, standing in the archway. He was wearing a Santa suit, but it was filthy. It was covered in grease stains and patches of black mold. The suit was 3 sizes too big, hanging off his frame like he was made of sticks. He wasn't fat. He was skeletal. He didn't move. He just stood there, breathing in a wheezing, rattling rhythm. He raised a hand. His fingers were long and gray, like dead twigs. He pointed a single finger toward the empty fireplace mantel. A sound rumbled in his throat. A low, animalistic growl that vibrated the floorboards. Late. Panic hijacked my brain. My hands slick with sweat. The plate slipped. The ceramic shattered against the linoleum. The raw liver slid across the floor, stopping inches from his boots. He twitched. Then he lunged. He didn't run like a human. He moved with jerky, unnatural speed, like a stop-motion puppet missing frames. I threw myself backward, scrambling into the laundry room. I slammed the door and slid the bolt lock shut just as a heavy body impacted the wood. The door frame cracked, but it held. I backed away, huddling against the dryer, shaking so hard my teeth clattered together. On the other side of the door, the banging stopped. Then came the sound. Chewing. Loud. Wet. Slurping noises. He was eating the raw meat off the kitchen tiles. I could hear the gristle snapping between his teeth. Then, silence. I waited. 1 minute. 2. Then, a soft scratching on the wood. Honey? I froze. It was my mom's voice. Perfectly clear. Warm. Safe. It's okay, sweetie. He's gone. I heard the noise. You can open the door now. Relief washed over me so hard I almost cried. I stood up and reached for the lock. Mom, I'm so sorry. I stopped. My hand hovered over the deadbolt. My eyes drifted down to the gap at the bottom of the door. A thick, dark liquid was seeping under the doorframe, pooling around my socks. It wasn't cold. It was steaming hot. My mom was asleep upstairs. She had taken a sleeping pill. She wouldn't have heard a nuclear bomb, let alone a plate breaking. Open up, the voice said. It didn't sound like my mom anymore. It sounded like a corrupted audio file, glitching and skipping. Open up, sweetie. The liquid touched my bare skin. It was blood. The knob didn't rattle. It didn't shake. It just slowly, quietly, began to turn. He wasn't mimicking my mother to trick me. He was mimicking her because he had just swallowed her voice box.
Story 3. The final shift. The mall closed 3 hours ago. The security guards had already done their rounds and left. The main lights were dead, leaving only the dim amber glow of the emergency exit signs. But the Santa in the center court never got up. I was working the closing shift at the pretzel kiosk. My manager had bailed early, leaving me to scrub the counters alone. I was sweeping up salt near the fountain when I finally walked over to the throne. He was just sitting there. His head was tilted down, his fake white beard covering his chest. "Hey," I called out. My voice echoed too loudly in the empty atrium. "Buddy, the mall's closed. You have to go." He didn't twitch. He didn't even breathe. I shook my head, annoyed. I turned my back to toss the trash bag into the bin. It took maybe 5 seconds. When I turned back around, my broom clattered to the floor. He was closer. He hadn't walked. He was still sitting on the throne, his posture identical. But the heavy velvet chair had slid 30 feet across the tile floor without making a sound. He was now right at the edge of the food court carpet. My stomach turned. The silence in the mall suddenly felt heavy, like the air was being sucked out of the room. I grabbed my bag and speed-walked toward the south exit near Macy's. I pushed the crash bar on the glass doors. It didn't budge. I looked down. There were no chains. There were no locks. The metal of the door was fused to the frame. It looked like the steel had melted and hardened again. Panic set in. I sprinted to the west exit. Fused. I ran to the loading dock hallway. The door was gone. Just a smooth wall of drywall where the exit used to be. I was trapped in the dark with him. I backed away from the wall, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Somewhere behind me, I heard it. Ching, ching, ching. Sleigh bells. Soft, rhythmic, and getting louder. I ducked into an open clothing store, scrambling behind a circular rack of winter coats. I pulled my knees to my chest, hiding in the fabric, watching the entrance through the display window. The bells stopped. I waited. The silence stretched until I thought I would scream. I slowly turned my head to look into the store mirror behind me. I froze. He was standing right behind the rack. He was enormous. Up close, he looked wrong. His face was plastic, a rigid, unmoving mask with painted rosy cheeks. But behind the cutout eye holes, real human eyes were frantically rolling around, wide with terror. I spun around to run, but he was too fast. He didn't grab me. He just reached out a stiff, gloved hand and touched my shoulder. His touch wasn't violent. It was cold. Spreading cold. The plastic jaw of the mask creaked open mechanically. A voice came out, but it wasn't a man's voice. It was synthesized, distorted, like a speaker blowing out. New, arrival, processed. I tried to scream, but my jaw wouldn't open. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't lift. I looked down at my hands. My skin was gone. In its place was smooth, hard fiberglass. My fingers were fused together in a permanent, polite wave. I wasn't dying. I was stiffening. The Santa picked me up effortlessly, like I was a doll. He carried me out of the store and toward the display window. He set me down next to the other mannequins. I couldn't blink. I could only stare forward. As he walked away to sit back on his throne, I looked at the mannequin next to me. It was wearing a summer dress. Its face was painted in a permanent smile. But inside the plastic eye sockets, I saw a real human pupil. It darted to the left, looking right at me. It was my manager. She hadn't bailed early. We are open tomorrow from 9 to 9. And I will be here. Smiling. Forever.